members of the diaspora, our listening and viewing audience, a pleasant good evening. We are almost to the end of the first quarter of 2022, and so I think it is proper and fitting for us to have a press brief to update the public on a couple of issues that may be of concern to members of the public. Also to provide an opportunity for you, the members of the media, to engage us on any matter that may be of concern to you, the members of the media, as well as the wider public. In starting this very short press brief, I will first give you an update on a few outstanding circumstances which may be of interest to you. First of all is to update you on the situation relating to the several crops that was recovered from a floating wooden vessel within our jurisdiction. To date, we continue our work with Interpol on this matter, and we are currently in the process of extracting and labeling DNA samples for forensic analysis and future reference. As we advance this investigation to its completion, following the extraction of the DNA samples on those remains, we will then finally be able to put the souls of those who perished in what must have been a very horrific and tragic circumstances. Secondly, and sadly so, we have not found the missing person, Mr. Michael Brown from St. Patrick. Neither do we have any meaningful leads on this matter. We continue to appeal for public assistance in this regard and want to remind us all to keep this outstanding matter in mind, as we still have a loved one, a member of a family who is unaccounted for since October 10th, 2021. Additionally, I want to update you to indicate that in our fight against prettier larceny, we have moved to make a significant change in this regard. We have appointed for the very first time a superintendent to be directly in charge of this responsibility to lead the RGPF efforts in the fight against prettier larceny. To date, we have had a few meetings with the ministry with a view to looking to have the prettier larceny task force adequately resourced, reorganized, and equipped with vehicles, equipment, and personnel to enhance their capacity to improve their ability to more effectively support farmers in the fight against prettier larceny. We are also in the process of reforming and re-energizing our farm watch schemes as we seek to strengthen partnership with farmers in this fight. As recent as Tuesday, I attended a farm watch meeting in Guelph in an effort to pursue this very said objective. Despite prettier larceny reports being contracted by 20% in 2021 as compared to 2020, this gives us no feeling of comfort, as both prettier larceny and stock trespass crimes against our farmers remains unacceptably high. I now want to speak briefly to the recent incidents of violence within our community. Last year, we did relatively well. We recorded an overall 3% contraction or reduction in reported crimes. And for the first time in our history, we recorded a 78% solving rate of crimes reported to the RGPF. We also recorded 5 homicides for the entire year, a reduction from 14 in 2020, with the first being recorded in the month of July. Noting, however, that any one homicide is one too much. However, for this year, and we are not at the end of the first quarter as yet, nonetheless, we have recorded what I term 3 senseless, unnecessary killings of another. Recent videos of youthful indiscretions of violence against the elderly, the vulnerable, and among themselves is disturbing and concerning on many levels. Where is the sense of value, self-control, respect and restraint for others, and the value of life among our youth? This is a question we must all ask ourselves. It is also fair to ask, what is the RGPF doing about this? In addition to sustaining our zero-tolerance approach on offensive weapons, which might I indicate, it is one of the very few areas that has reflected increases in our statistics last year. This increase is driven not only by a desire of members of the public to carry offensive weapons, but also by assertive actions by the RGPF to seek it out and take appropriate actions whenever identified. However, we will also intensify, and you've probably observed that already, increased law enforcement activities in and around all sporting activities. We will engage schools to speak with the student population on the issue of violence and other law enforcement issues in a general context through our school liaison officers. We will work with principals, staff, and PTAs to provide guidance, partnership, and support in tackling this problem wherever it may be required. We will revisit our training and double down on our briefing of our officers on the approach and strategies to better treat with emotionally charged situations. We will seek to lead a multi-sectorial approach on youth violence. I do not believe the RGPF has all in-house skills and knowledge necessary to address this very concerning issue. We will also endeavor to implement in short order a Crime Stoppers initiative, which we have already started pursuing. However, to achieve the above, we expect the cooperation of members of the public in the execution of our duties, which will be done and has always been done to ensure the safety and security of all. The incidents of stoning officers, police vehicles, and blatant open confrontation of officers, sometimes fighting with officers, is not only unacceptable, but also uncharacteristic of our Grenadian culture. And I must say, in this regard and those incidents, our police officers have demonstrated considerable restraint in treating with those incidents. While these incidents I refer to can still be characterized as isolated, we need to stem it before it becomes the norm. As I've said before, we cannot do this alone, and we need the support, all the support we can get from members of the public. Crime and crime control is a whole of society responsibility. We have a responsibility as members of our society to first and foremost protect ourselves from becoming victims of crime, to report criminal activities and information on incidents of crime, to institute, participate in activities at the community level that will enhance community security and safety. We must be a part of the solution, otherwise we are becoming a part of the problem. Collectively, police and public, we must build a coalition against crime in all its forms if we are to preserve the general peace and tranquility of our nation that we usually enjoy. Another vexing issue is the regularity with which our young teenage girls are leaving home, sometimes for days. I have spoken to this before, and I will raise these rhetorical questions again. What is really fueling this problem? Is it circumstances at home, peer pressure, a lack of values and self-control? Is it a case of exploiting the vulnerabilities of our young and impressionable minds, or is it a combination of all? Whatever it may be, We need to fix it and fix it fast, for this is a very concerning matter. Colleagues, in concluding, Grenada remains one of, if not the safest nation in our region. And we all, as a people, have a collective responsibility to work together to preserve this unique and significant competitive advantage. I thank you, and I look forward to any questions and concerns members of the media may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. So, colleagues, you've heard from the Commissioner of Police, Mr. Edwin Martin. Is anybody ready with their questions? All right, so while they get their thoughts together, Commissioner, you mentioned about the multi-sectoral approach on youth violence. Can you just expound on that a bit for us?
As indicated, the RGPF does not have all of the resources required in treating with this problem. In dealing with the issue of youth violence, in dealing with the issues of youth indiscretions and delinquencies, certainly you require the aid of qualified counselors. You require the aid of persons who understand the dynamics of the development of the youth. There is a criminological perspective that indicates that the youth generally grows out of delinquency, that it is a phase. But certainly what we need to develop multi-sectorially is to have a mechanism that can identify the youth that are at risk, be it in school or in the community, and be able to have appropriate interventions to actually target and address and provide the support that is necessary to help these individuals lead successful lives. From the analysis we have had, and just to go deeper into the explanation, from the analysis we have made, one of the issues impacting very young individuals is the fact that we do live in a materialistic consumption society, where persons are driven by having all of the technical items, the gadgets, the fancy shoes, clothes, and phones. And the sense of being identified amongst peers becomes a problem because individuals are assessed by what they possess and what they wear rather than their character. And so in this approach, we need to have individuals that can assess us with impression on the minds of individuals and young persons, those values, morals, and character that will be critical for their own development. Thank you.
Thank you. Johnson, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. I have one question I want to ask. Mr. Commissioner, you mentioned that the force is putting in place systems to deal with training for officers to deal with emotionally charged situation. Another area of concern, sir, is how officers deal with mentally ill patients. I know that was one of the issues raised just a couple of nights ago. Do you have any plans to deal with that particular situation, and what are the RGPF plans to get qualified, if that might be the correct term, to deal with mentally challenged people in the community?
Johnson, thank you very much. This is a very touching question. You probably will recall in our history quite a number of persons with mental issues. By responding with the police, some individuals have actually lost their life. Because of the police, of course, the police had to respond to those circumstances. And where and when the police officers' life become threatened, of course, the police officers have to respond. But we need to take on board the fact that responding to those circumstances, we are dealing with persons who are sick and are mentally challenged. And we must be able to foresee what those circumstances can be, and to be properly equipped and properly trained to be able to appropriately anticipate early, be prepared for those issues and expect the likelihood to arise, and have proper response mechanism that should not result in the loss of life. We have a bigger issue here, and the bigger issue is that we ideally need to have officers trained to the level to understand how to treat with the issue of mental cases. There was a point in time when we had officers trained and placed in every division in this regard. I think we need to revisit that. As a matter of fact, from our last incident in St. Patrick, we have revisited this and looking to receive training from the Ministry of Health to help our officers better understand and have in every station a repository of knowledge in understanding how to treat and respond to persons with mental problems. In addition, I believe we also need to have a sort of joint response with medical and police to treat with mental situations. But we do understand the fact that where you might have a mental person and the behavior of which is putting the life of regular members of the public at risk, the police really and truly, we are first responders, and sometimes we tend to have to be there before we can get the support of another entity. And this actually reinforces the point why the police need to have the theoretical and conceptual skills that are required to properly strategize and respond to those situations, as well as we must have the appropriate tools and equipment so that when we arrive, our last resort level of force does not become our first response. I hope that answers your question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other question from you, Johnson? Colleagues?
Yes, I just want to ask again, sir, you gave updates on the situation up at St. Patrick's. I did not hear any mention made about the situation in Mardi Gras, St. George. The lady, Miss Cecilia Mongo, I think that's some decomposed body was discovered up in the mountain. To date, we have not heard any update on it. What's the situation now with respect to those women that was found up in the bushes there?
Thank you, Johnson. On that question with Ms. Mongo, just for your information, the matter was completed, the investigation was completed in this matter, and the file was submitted to the Director of Public Prosecutions, who directed that matter goes for an inquest. So as it stands, the matter is before the magistrate to conduct an inquest, sorry, the coroner, to conduct an inquest into the circumstances of the death of that woman.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Johnson. Colleagues, anybody else with questions?
Afternoon. I have a question.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, commissioners. I listened to what you just said, Commissioner Martin, about this response that is required to handle matters like that. What is preventing us? Because we have recognized those shortcomings for quite a while now. It is not the first time that solution has been articulated. What is preventing us from getting there? Or if we're working on it, how soon will we get there?
Yeah, thank you very much, Kalistra. And I do identify from your follow-up question with Johnson, and I'm deeply moved by this. And I believe the questions of the media is reflective of the concern of the community as well, as to how we treat and deal with the mental persons. I can't say there is an obstacle, but I will acknowledge the fact that we have not moved as fast as we would have liked to in particularly resourcing alternative items. And we have done some. I can tell you now, we actually have placed at almost every division the use of stun guns that can be used to address those persons. But in our research and other advice in dealing with those circumstances, we learn that even those those can, depending on the medical condition of the individual you're responding to, that if you have to use that, it can also trigger a heart attack, leading to the same kind of result. So we are a bit hesitant in even carrying and using those until we can be sure that it actually becomes a better alternative to using deadly force. This is a very concerning matter, Callistra, and we, in all honesty, we definitely need to find more sustainable and better solutions where we can respond on every single occasion, and we will not be happy until we can respond to every single call for service as it relates to a mentally disturbed person that does not result in not just their death, but any injury at all to them. We will not relent on this, and I trust that probably this will be the last press briefing that we will have to address this in this manner. Thank you.
Any other question from you, Callistra?
And just one more, I think. I saw the video of a student, everybody's talking about it, so you know what video I'm referring to, of a student in a confrontation with police officers, multiple police officers. And it led me to wonder, and I hope you can let me know, I don't know if this was dealt with earlier in the news conference. Let me see, I am late joining. The police is not trained in martial arts techniques and methods of subduing people, because I thought it went on for quite a while and the police officers didn't twist his arm behind his back and put him face down on the pavement and handcuff him. Our police officers are not equipped coming out of training school to do that kind of thing.
Thank you, Callistra, and thank you for identifying as well the fact of the difficult and formidable circumstances that police officers operate on a daily basis in treating with those cases. I really admire the fact that you do identify that. But we must also stretch our minds too. And yes, let me answer the first part of the question first. Yes, police officers do receive at basic training, basic self-defense training that can be utilized. Our training also includes how to be able to execute and restraining holds. But the circumstances and the dynamics here changes significantly in the mind of an officer when you are dealing with a minor. And I'm sure you can stretch your mind that if you were seen, to use your words, if you are using karate and self-defense skills on a school child, how that very video will be reflected. So that in itself caused certain challenges. You will find, because we are dealing with a minor, that officers will exercise some measure of restraint before, if it really gets out of hand, then you move to that level. But I do not think you will see in responding to kids that the first response of the officer is to use some martial art techniques, if you may, in pinning a student. We are conscious of that image, and we are very conscious that every single move the police makes is being videoed as well. So reservedly, the police officer will have to eventually do this, but this certainly will have to be applied casually. And you do not want to see a gang of police officers ganging up on one student either, as that itself is also not only does not look good, but it does not send the right message. But I do agree with you, and I believe the root of what you're getting at here is that we do have a concern, and the concern is not just with students, it's how we treat with the whole wider population in terms of our response to treat with particular levels of lawlessness in society. And I want to remind us all that to date, our police force still execute its duties on the ground, by and large, without being armed. Simply because we still remain a very civil law enforcement organization and want to be as polite as possible. But what we do expect from members of the public, that same sort of respect is reciprocated in kind. At the bottom line, police officers are also humans. We also come from families and homes and have wives and children as well. So we need to make sure that the police officers on the ground, they are your police officers. They are there to police the country and to keep you safe. And so let us do the best that we can to empower and to support them. And when they do wrong, let us call it out so we can address it, deal with it, so that it becomes an example to educate others that we do not and refrain from those issues going forward. Thank you.
That's it, Callistra?
No, Leslie, and I'm begging your indulgence.
Go
because
ahead.
I said the last one, but Commissioner, I'm reminded of something you said a while back about if things continue to worsen on the front of crime and violence and misbehavior in the country, that the police officers walking around without firearm would change. Are you now rethinking? Is that now at the front of your mind in terms of putting your men out there in a more, well, I shouldn't say more aggressive fashion, but armed, better armed to deal with the situation? You had spoken about it in the context of, I think, was it Carnival and other, where violence happens?
Yeah, thank you again, Callistra. I am pleased to indicate that things have not worsened. And you probably did join the press brief a bit late, because I did indicate in the press brief that Grenada still remains one of, if not the safest place in the region. And that's a boast that we have. I believe it is a competitive advantage that we do have, and we need to protect it jealously. So those comments, yes, was made in the context of the circumstances at the time, but I am happy to report that things have not changed. And I do, as I stated earlier on in my comments, the circumstances that we do experience now, I do still believe them, though alarming as they may be, I do consider them still to be isolated circumstances and not reflective of the wider society, and certainly cannot now be categorized as yet as a trend. We will continue to monitor and treat accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Callistra. Colleagues, anybody else with questions?
Yes, I have another question, Leslie.
Go ahead, Johnson.
Mr. Commissioner, some time ago, I visited, I attended a ceremony where a number of young people were recruited as a special arm of the fire department. There was a move to give greater independence to the fire department. Can you provide some update on that area, and how far have you gone in terms of giving independence to the fire department and moving them away from the main branch of the RGPF?
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I cannot comment on the issue of the fire department moving away from the RGPF. That will have to be ultimately a policy decision. But I will tell you clearly that it is a decision, if so decided, that I fully support. I believe the separation of the fire department as an entity all by itself will bring sharper focus to that department as it relates to its purpose and mission. And certainly I believe it will result in improving the efficiency and effectiveness of that department. And might I add, I also believe the same applies to immigration. However, on the update of the individuals and officers, we have moved to implementing a fire department in every parish. First time in our history that we have that. Save and except for St. David, and I guess that, as you know, the place to house the fire department for St. David is currently under construction, and we are hoping that in short order we will be able to do that. We have an appliance earmarked for that parish so that we can better treat with it. You may recall, if you inquire, you probably will learn as well that recent fire we had in St. Patrick, there were 3 or 4 fire plants at that scene, with Victoria, Satyrs, Grenville responding as well into that particular situation. That is the sort of strength and redundancy we want in the fire department, so that it will renowned, hopefully, potentially, to help saving lives and property into the future. Thank you.
Final questions, colleagues? We're getting ready to wrap up. Commissioner, is there still, how prevalent is the problem of weapons in schools?
This is a question I would have liked to stay away from. Because in treating with schools, I'm telling you frankly, treating with schools and treating with kids, and certainly there were issues I had to mention. I stayed away from it. But it is concerning. It is concerning. Just before arriving to this press conference, I received pictures of the confiscation of a number of what I consider to be dangerous knives and daggers in a primary school. In a primary school. 2 days ago, we responded to a controversy in a secondary school over the steal and hide and re-steal and hide of a gun mirroring that of a real firearm, albeit the fact that it being an A-gun in a school, and the police had to intervene and recover that. Addedly, we have seen also in the videos, recent videos circulated, that kids seem to have the liberty of carrying weapons and firearms on the, not firearms, but knives and offensive weapons on their person at schools. We need to address this. And this is one of the things we need to find the best ways in which we can treat, while at the same time not compromising or treating indiscriminately with the students involved or even the schools. But we need to empower the schools to more effectively monitor this. And the multi-sectorial approach that I spoke to earlier that is needed is specifically to target schools in how we can develop strategies to best address these particular issues. There was some time ago when this problem was showing its head in one or two of the schools, and police officers had to be deployed back then to support the school in conducting searches on selected individuals who were known to be carrying weapons into the school. The situation improved and we pulled back. Not that the police was doing the searching. This was being done at the time by the schools themselves. Of course, because we know that we have to tread very carefully in treating with our students. But the short of the answer, having said all of that, is that weapons in school is concerning. And whether I choose to speak of it or not, I know certainly in a social media world that we now live in short order, you will be aware of all of them. So I might as well tell you what the situation is. And again, this is a clarion call here for parents to be more sensitive and more attentive to their kids when leaving for school, and to pay more attention in this regard, because you will be at home and then you probably get some very bad news that your child was involved in a circumstances, and the facts of it you might end up shocking you. We need to have, as a society, a stronger vested interest in the development of our kids, not only in the home, but also in the community. The police stands at the last end of intervention. The other institutions or organs of our society needs to chip in and see how best we can address to help our young people who are the future of our nation into tomorrow, help them to become model citizens, live exemplary lives, so that this nation can continue being a spectacle that will make us proud into the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Somebody was about to ask a question. Go right ahead.
Leslie, and a member of the public was wanted to ask through me, because they don't have access, with Cuthbert John from Malmont in St. David, who was reported missing by his family. Does the police have an update?
Francois. Likewise, Calistria, like the unfortunate one in St. Patrick, it alluded me to mention that one, and I do apologize. But yes, that also remains an outstanding missing person case as well, not yet resolved. Thank you for raising and reminding the public by your question as well that that matter also remains outstanding. Thank you very much.
Final question, colleagues. Our Commissioner, you have the final word.
Thank you very much. And certainly, again, I want to conclude as I've started. I'm definitely moved by being afforded the opportunity to be able to speak on the issues, law enforcement issues that are of concern to our public, and to provide an update therein. I think it was a press brief that long overdue, and certainly I think we need to endeavor to do better going into the future. But my final words basically is to call on the general public to please continue giving us your support. We are here to work for you, and it is in furtherance of your peace and safety. We cannot do this alone. We are finite in resources and numbers, and we are not at every single location in our society. We depend on you to inform us. We depend on you to serve as witness. We depend on you to do the best that you can within your own responsibility to prevent yourselves from becoming victims of crime. Certainly the RGPF will always be a very trusted and reliable partner, doing the best that we can to the best of our capabilities to ensure the continued peace and safety of our nation, and of course to contribute to the preservation of our competitive advantage of peace, safety and security in our region. On this note, I thank you and best wishes to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner of Police Edwin Martin, and of course Deputy Commissioner of Police Michael Francois, responsible for operations, who of course was supporting the Commissioner. And as mentioned in his introductory part, he did mention that officers there will be more of a greater presence of officers at school sporting activities, just to ensure, of course, that the youths of the nation, the future of our country, behave in a manner that is expected of them. But as we mentioned, also parents have to do their part to ensure that they see what their children are doing, check their bags if you need to before they leave for school. They might not like it, but it's what we have to do as parents. We have a moral responsibility, so let us do what we need to. And of course, the public, just give the police the support that you can as much as possible. So thank you to all viewers on Channel 22 of Facebook page, the YouTube channel, those of you in the diaspora, and of course, thank you to our colleagues for joining us and for asking your questions. I'm Leslie Ann Johnson. Thank you so much. Have a good afternoon.